In this lecture, I'm going to take a look at the groups in Mixer channel. So, you can group things together in the mixer. And why should you use groups in the mixer? And this is because, one, you want to organize your different instruments together. So let's say that you have a lot of different individual drums. For instance, you have, let's say, a kick drum, you have some hi-hat samples there, you have snares, you have toms and different stuff. You want to group them because you want, in your final project, you want all of these different individual drum samples to sound like one. You want them to sound like one drum set, And this is why it's very important to group things together. And as I said, number one, that's the most important thing, to get organized, to have every single individual element of the instrument organized in one place. And number two is to group them together to having them sound like one. So you want to compress and treat every single individual instrument in the group, and then you want all of those sounds to sound like one. And you want it because you don't want your track to sound very like it's done on a computer, It depends, of course, of what kind of music you're producing, but most often, in my case, I've always created projects and big productions when grouping things together, and you want them to sound like one, basically. So I will demonstrate how I do it in the mixer, how I group things together. So let's say that we create a drum beat here. So let's go to the channel rack, and I'm going to import different individual drum elements here. So let's find a kick drum here that I want to use. Very nice. So let's program a basic kick sample there. Cool. So now let's go to a hi-hat here. We want a very quick beat here. Nice. So let's see what we have here. Let's go with a snare. Let's make this a bit longer here. So going to create something like this. Let's see here. All right. So it's a very, very nice and basic, simple beat. So what I'm going to do with this beat here is to use all of these individual elements inside of my group that is named drums. So this is basically my bus. And I created this in the template when we created templates in that lecture. So if you want to remind yourself how to do this, just go back to that lecture and you will see how I did this. So what I'm going to do here is to basically group every single, I'm actually going to treat each and every individual sample here as one first. So I'm going to create, let's see, we have 4 samples. So I'm going to assign the first one to number 6, second one to number 7, and 8 and 9. Great. So I'm going to route this channels instead. So you can either do it by the way that I did, but we're going to do it a much easier way. So just select that track you want, go to the mixer track you want, and then just choose channel routing and route selected channels to this track. And you have a key command for that as well, so you don't have to go this way each and every time. So let's do it. I'm actually going to rename color and icon here just so we can color this. So let's go with the same kind of color here for every single individual element here in the drum section. Nice. So now just select that. So let's route this to number 5. I'm going to select this. Number 6. All right, so that is now routed to number 6. Then let's go with this track now. Route, channel routing. Don't want this to be routed to anywhere for now. And we want this one to be to number 6. So now it's number 6, 7, 8, and 9. And this wasn't colored or named or anything because I think it was selected with all of the tracks. You want to make sure that just one of these tracks here are selected when doing this. So I'm going to do this manually for this one. So it was the 707 close hat, and we had that green kind of color there. Very nice. So now we have the group here with these 4 tracks. And we could group these together to one single group, but I'm going to use them as a bus. So I'm going to have these 4 tracks separate, and then we're going to route all of these 4 tracks to this bus here. And in this bus, we're going to treat the drum section as one. Very easy to do so in FL Studio. You just select the track you want, and then go to the bus here, and just click this arrow here. Now you can see it's going, the signal is going here. And it's also going to the master. So we want to delete the master here. We want the sound to go first to our drum bus. And then from our drum bus, you can see it's a cable that goes from the drum bus to the master. So the signal will actually flow from this channel here. The individual sound will travel to the drum bus, through the different drum bus plugins here, and then to the master. So we want to do this with all of the different sounds that we have here. So just go to that, and same thing goes here. So now all of these sounds here will travel through our drums bus here and then to the master. Let's play it now. I have to select the kick drum as well. So now you can see we can treat all of these sounds with just one volume meter here. So let's say you want to set the different volume level of all of these drums here. We can just do it with one volume fader here. And we can also do different stuff now. We can just take, let's say we want a reverb here. So let's choose this reverb here. We can set it to maximum wet, and let's get rid of the dry signal here. And now we're going to have this as an effect in the drum bus. So we can now take this dial button here and just have it set to minimum or maximum, and we can set how much of the reverb we want. So for instance, we can automate this now. We can automate this to, let's say, somewhere in the track we want the drums to have a lot of reverb, and then we want to get rid of the reverb. Or you can set how much you want of the reverb signal. So you can just tell FL Studio how much of the reverb you want on the drums here. Let's try it out. And as you remember in the previous lecture, where we created the templates for FL Studio, we also created the buses for the different instruments. So you can see now we have our compressor, and it's already doing its job for the drums. So we actually don't need to make anything in the compressor here, other than if you wouldn't like the sound of the compressor, of course. But just a preset, just a drum preset for the compressor, and that will make your drum sounds sound like one rather than individual samples. So it's already doing its job there, and you don't actually need to do anything if you have all of these set up in the templates that you're starting out with. So you just basically import different samples, throw them in there, then you route all of the drums to the drum bus here, and you're basically good to go, you know. So you can just start to arrange your track and work very, very fast within FL Studio. But as you can see here, I always recommend you to have a reverb setting in your buses here, and you have to make sure that you have the wet signal to maximum and the dry signal to 0 here, because you only want the reverb signal when you're messing with this dial button here. Same goes with EQ. Now we have the kick drum here as well. So the kick drum's bottom is going away because we have this. So let's exclude the kick drum from the drums bus here. So let's go to the kick drum here, and we're going to take away the cable and just route it back to the master basically. So now if we disable the drums bus here, very basic to do so. So that is how you group different things and create buses in FL Studio. It's very easy to do so. I recommend you to work this way because it's going to make your life a lot easier when you create your track and when you start to mixing and stuff. And I always recommend you to do this while producing, and not just thinking of it like, oh, I will handle this later on in the mixing stage, you know, and just throwing that problem away and just getting messy, because you're going to have a lot of different work when you're going to set up all of the individual sounds. Let's say that you have hundreds or thousands of sounds even in your project. That's not uncommon, you know, when you're creating big, huge projects. And let's say that you have 500 sounds, for instance, and then you have to set it up everything in mixing stage. Let's say you want to have every individual sound in their own like mixing channel here. Then it's going to be a lot of work for you. So I don't recommend you to do that when you're like mixing. You have to do it when you're producing. That way it's going to be a lot easier to go to the mixing stage. I will show you when I create the full track how I work, and you will see that the mixing stage is actually going to be very, very short. It's not going to be a lot of mixing, and this is how I notice how other big producers out there that I worked with, how they handle the mixing stage, because the mixing stage is very important. You need to level your different sounds. You need to, and that is actually the most important thing in the mixing stage. It's just to level different stuff with the volume level basically. And then just EQ, of course, and compression and other stuff like that. But it's going to be a lot easier to handle the different EQ section and the compression, for instance, and other stuff like that when you have volumes already set. So when you produce, you group your different sounds together, you set the volumes for them when we're producing, and then when you go to the mixing, it's just basically EQ and compression, and that's all in the mixing. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do that when I create the track, so you will see everything of that. All right, guys. So I hope to see you in the next lecture.